Hello, everyone, and welcome to A New Direction. My name's Jay Izzo, and man, we have another great show for you. It is absolutely outstanding. The author, Alex Brueckmann, his book, The Strategy Legacy, Wall Street Journal bestseller, How to Future-Proof a Business and Leave Your Mark. Folks, let me just tell you this. Are you one of those people who thinks that you just build a strategy and then they just leave it at that, and that's the route you should go? Just build a strategy and everything will take care of itself. Let me just tell you I've read this thing. I've gone through it twice. I'm telling you that it's so sound principles. You're wrong. You need to have an identity first. Do you know what your identity is? Do you have any idea what your business identity is? Do you know what your moral code is? Do you know what your values really are? Is everybody living up to them? How's that mission statement that you've got hanging on the wall? Is that real, or is it just something you put up there? Right? By the way, what's your last time you checked on your vision? How's your vision looking? And I don't mean your vision for 1, 2, and 5 years. I mean 10, 15 years down the road. Have you looked at that? Have you? Probably not. That's the beauty of this book right here. I have to tell you, I am a strategy person, and I do believe in identity and purpose. I'm a coach. I'm a mindset coach, and I believe in that you got to know your purpose and that you need to at least be working towards that. And I believe there's two types of purpose. There's purpose with a capital P and purpose with a small p. Purpose with the big P is what's your life purpose. Purpose with the small p is what's your purpose and what you're doing right now. I believe in those two things. Alex simplifies it great for us here. This is going to be an outstanding conversation. Call your friends, call your enemies. I don't care who they are. Get them on the show and ask questions if you would like. You can just write them in from wherever you're listening to us everywhere. Let me do this though before we get any further. I need to introduce you to Alex Brueckmann. Alex Brueckmann is a strategy practitioner and executive development expert of more than 15 years. Alex is the founder and CEO of Brueckmann Strategy Consultants based in Vancouver, Canada. Go Canada and Vancouver. His clients are executive teams of medium to large businesses around the world, from Inc. 5,000 to Fortune 50 companies. Alex is the creator of 9EOI, the 9 elements of organizational identity. We're going to get into that right away. So good. The model and process outlined in the Strategy Legacy, that's this book, which became the basis for the #1 strategy facilitator certification program. Alex provides practical advice and insights on strategy, leadership, and AI-fueled growth, tested and concisely written. Alex's books, The Strategy Legacy, was a Wall Street best-selling book, and Secrets of Next Level Entrepreneurs, which I have not read yet, but I am chomping at the bit now that I've read this one. You could join Alex's LinkedIn community. What's the name of that community on LinkedIn, Alex?
Well, there is, for one, From the Strategy Room, which is kind of my LinkedIn newsletter, where I feed information around strategy and leadership every week. And then there's obviously more free resources available on our website.
Yeah, and so it's called From the Strategy Room on LinkedIn. So I know my LinkedIn followers listen, check that out. You're going to really love that. Also, he's got you can get his free facilitator toolkit. Go to www.Brueckmann. Now let me spell Brueckmann for you. BRUECKMANN, and it's .ca. So let me say it again. It's www.BRUECKMANN.ca. By the way, he has a podcast, Secrets of Next Level Entrepreneurs, and that's available on all the podcast platforms. So check him out. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, and welcome to the first time, and I don't think the last time, Alex Brueckmann. Alex, welcome to A New Direction.
Thanks for having me, Jay. Thank you very much for the invitation.
I am so excited about this. I can't even stand it. So let's just get into chapter 1. By the way, the book's divided up into 3 sections. Chapter 1, first section is understanding identity and the central role of strategy. You say this as part of part 1. You say great leaders recognize the potential of strategy processes and see that they have the power to create more than just strategy. Help us understand what you're trying to get at here in understanding identity and central strategy about the potential of strategy process and the power to create more than just that strategy.
if we think about the people who you typically involve in a strategy process, those are typically the brightest minds that you have in a business. Those with a lot of experience, those with a fresh set of eyes. And these people typically have a full desk already, right? They have a full-time job. They will probably work even more than they should already. And then there comes the idea around the corner of, hey, let's create a new strategy. It's kind of time our strategy cycle comes to an end. We need to refresh that. Or, you know what? We've grown so much despite not having a strategy. We should probably get our head around how that thing continues to grow. There are all kinds of reasons why organizations have an outdated strategy, don't have a strategy at all. I'm not judging, I'm just describing how it looks like. And then you ask yourself, okay, wait a second, there is more than just strategy. There's the whole topic of culture. There's the whole topic of leadership. There's the whole idea of how do we build an execution edge so that that strategy or all these elements of our identity, as you said in the beginning, Jay, don't just hang on the walls in a meeting room, but actually have meaning and impact on a daily basis. So how do you do that? And if you bring your brightest minds together anyway to talk about strategy, you want to make sure that you use this time and this process to address more than just the strategy piece. The interesting part is you could also do the same exercise and start talking about culture, or you could start talking about leadership. But the impact, the business relevance of the strategy feels closer to most leaders than the other two options, like culture and leadership. Now, in an ideal world, you understand that a strategy needs a cultural foundation on which it is built, and it needs strong leadership to execute it and implement it. Now, if you are a large organization, or you have some, let's say, 10, 15, 20 years of experience in larger organizations, you will definitely have worked with an external consulting company. Some of them might have been strategy consulting businesses. And what you typically end up with is somewhere between 300 to 400 presentation slides that capture what that company has created for you in terms of analyses. And then it's up to you to make decisions based on those analyses. That is just what it is. But then people would call that slide deck a strategy, which is the first step toward hell, because it's not a strategy. 400 pages are never a strategy. It's 400 pages. So taking that and doing something with it is extremely difficult for leaders. And I've seen many so-called strategies fail because of that, because people were given a strategy and were told to then do something with it, which unfortunately is not how the world works. Anyway, many organizations have experienced that pain. They have this strategy PTSD, and they want to try something new and want to do it differently. And that's when they then ask themselves, okay, why didn't that work the first time we tried that? And they realize we didn't really anchor that in who we are. Like it was just analyses. That the same analyses are true for any other competitor of ours in the industry, right? So let's figure out how we can create something of meaning, something that is relevant for us, something that is built on some sort of competitive advantage that we have, or some sort of unfair advantage that we have compared to our competitors, and create meaning and value for our most important stakeholder groups. If you do that, you understand that strategy needs a cultural core and an execution edge to create something of meaning. And once you've dissected your past failures, I give you 100%, you realize that either the cultural connection or the leadership connection was missing. And that's why you saw a wonderful strategy on paper, but nothing really came from it. And to avoid that, we created the 9 elements framework, those 3 concentric circles that describe what the business is from a cultural perspective, like values, behavioral guidelines, what your mission is, like what are you doing for whom? Like just defining that is sometimes really difficult for companies. And once you have that clear, you can create your strategy based on that. And once you have your strategy, you can ask yourself, what are the capabilities that we need in the management systems and the individual targets to drive that into reality? And that is the reason why a strategy process needs to be used, or should ideally be used, for more than just the strategy piece, because you will have to touch these other pieces anyway. And you want to do that cohesively and not one step at a time, fractured, but in one go, so that you put the puzzle pieces together in a way that they support each other.
In this chapter, this first chapter, which is entitled Making New Friends, the 9 Elements of Organizational Identity, and you already alluded to the 3 concentric circles. There's an inner circle, a middle circle, and an outer circle. And I thought it was very interesting because the inner circle is really looking at more inside of us, impact, mission, and principles. The middle circle is more structured around our strategy and the strategic core of who we are. And then the outer circle is how do we put that strategy into action? So what I would like to do, if it's okay with you, I would like to start with the inner circle here of impact, mission, and principles, and kind of work our way through these 9 if we can, if we have the time to do it, because I think it's so fundamental. If these first 3 are fundamentally important to me. If we don't get at least how I read this book, if we don't get impact, principles, and mission right, I don't know how we get to the middle circle. Do I have that wrong?
You cannot get to the middle circle without these in place, because then you would just create something that would be a transactional, financially driven. I don't even want to call it strategy. It's just something that, and I don't know, for some people that might be enough, but if you've been around long enough, you know that the world is more than stuffing your pockets with money. And you can do that in very unethical ways, and very inhumane ways. If you understand your cultural core, what you then do has meaning, and what you then do will create a legacy, a positive legacy. And as you mature, you realize at some point that the legacy that you create as a leader, as an individual, or as an organization is sort of what people remember. Like if you hear the word Enron, you don't remember the good things.
No.
If you hear the word Exxon Valdez, you don't remember the good things. You remember the legacy that is associated to the worst things that happened.
Right.
At the same token, if you hear the word Volkswagen, you probably smile because you remember things like the Beetle and the Volkswagen, the buses, these iconic shapes.
Right.
You probably even associate Porsche with Volkswagen. Like, who doesn't smile when they see a 911, right? It's just that at the same time, especially because of recent developments or recent history, you also associate that name with Dieselgate. And that is not such a positive thing. So it is essential to define the non-negotiable values in your business that you live by, and that you translate those into specific moments and real life interactions, and how you then show up as individuals, as leaders, as an organization. And we call the most important part of that, we call diamond values. The values that are non-negotiable for you. Diamond, because even under pressure, they will not be altered. You could even say you are willing to lose customers because of that. You're willing to get heat because of standing up to those values. And there are not a lot of organizations out there that are willing to take any kind of heat these days. And those who do are the ones that have the biggest brand power. I mean, look at Patagonia, for example.
Yeah.
Like, I always say Patagonia doesn't have customers. They have raving fans that support their cause. And that's why they are willing to pay like 200-300% premium on a really good product. But still, you could also buy good products from somewhere else. The reason people buy Patagonia is because they support their quest of preserving the environment and preserving this earth for future generations in the most meaningful ways. So if you have that clear, if your cultural core is clear, you will make decisions based on that. And those decisions will eventually create a competitive edge. And that is why you can't start with a strategy. You need to start with your cultural core.
Okay, so let's go right to impact. Okay, because it's ladies and gentlemen, here's the thing. This inner circle is made up of impact, principles, and mission. And so I want to go through these if we can. Impact, and you define this as the change you want to create based on your purpose. That is your reason to exist as an organization. So let's talk about impact and how we need to think about impact first before we get to principles and mission. How do we need to think about impact? What are we thinking here? What should be our mindset when it comes to going, okay, what's our impact?
I think many people are not aware, or many organizations are not explicitly aware, and they're not explicitly building on that awareness when it comes to the value that they create for their clients, or the value that they bring to their community or a country or whatever it is, like the world as a whole, the environment, whatever it is. And what we mean is, like, I was socialized as a leader in a time where there was a lot of talk about purpose and organizations and individuals having to have a purpose or needing a purpose. I always found that interesting from the perspective that purpose is meaningless unless you do something with it. And there are so many organizations, so many individuals that claim they have a purpose. And then you take a look at how that purpose should guide their actions. And then you realize, wait a second, how is what you're doing here in reality connected to your purpose? You say your purpose is X, but you're doing something that is seemingly unaligned with that purpose. Help me understand that. So approaching that from a curious perspective and then having answers like, yeah, it kind of doesn't connect to our purpose. And you realize, for many organizations out there, you go on their website, you read their purpose statement, and you're like, are you serious? This is just nonsense. This is just marketing fluff. There is nothing that is tangible and honest about that. So being disillusioned around the concept of purpose, I still believe that purpose is important because it describes what you are uniquely positioned to bring to this world. But that is just an intention. It is an intent. It's something that you want to do. So rather than just claiming something to be your purpose, use that as an intermediate step and ask yourself, okay, if our purpose is X, what is the visible impact of us living up to that purpose? And by the way, that is simply the question of what is my strategy? In my definition, a strategy is your vehicle to turn your purpose into impact. So everything that you decide in a business needs to be in service of achieving the impact that you want to achieve. And the impact is literally the value, the visible value that you create for your most important stakeholders. So if you are an environmental protection organization, the tangible impact, the measurable impact of your work is hopefully that you preserve X square miles of near shore kelp forests as habitat for endangered species, for example. The purpose that you have is probably something way less specific, which is fine. And as a consequence of protecting the environment in that way and of ensuring biodiversity is not being decreased, you make an important contribution to keeping our food chains intact, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can just go down that rabbit hole and ask yourself, And what's the impact of that? And what's the impact of that? And what's the impact of that? And you can do the same thing as a for-profit organization that is, I don't know, creating some sort of small cog that sits in a bigger engine of a car. You can always ask yourself, what is the impact of what we do? I give you a specific example. I recently worked with an automotive company that had issues defining their purpose and their impact. The ideas that they had were heavily influenced by what we, I would say, socially understand when we hear the term purpose. But it was just not meaningful enough for them. So we sat down and helped them define what the impact is of a customer buying one of their vehicles. What is the type of vehicle that they sell? Who is the customer, and what is able for those customers? And conversations all of a sudden became very human, very tangible. For example, there is a certain type of their vehicles that is mainly being bought by mothers, single families, or grandparents, because they want to have a stronger part in the life of their families and don't want to sit at home and wait until someone visits them. So they want to have a more active part in life, in their family life. And all of a sudden you realize that what you really do is you help families get closer. You help individuals be less dependent on, let's say, public transport that is probably not as helpful as it could be. So you help these people live better lives, be more connected to their families, etc. So when you ask those questions, you all of a sudden realize that you're not in it to sell yet another car. You're in it for a different reason. The impact that you create is way more meaningful. And if you make the people in the business aware of the impact that their work has, all of a sudden, it has more meaning to them to show up every day. So that's why impact is so important.
His name's Alex Brueckmann. The book, The Strategy Legacy, How to Future-Proof a Business and Leave Your Mark, is joining us right now here. Fantastic book on a new direction. Hey, folks, Zoundy is the ultimate game changer. If you're an author or publisher, I am telling you, you're missing something out if you are not using Zoundy. Zoundy helps you maximize your audiobooks' reach and revenue. I am telling you right now, as a 4-time published author, I use Zoundy. Here's the deal why it's better than any other audiobook source. I'm going to be doing a conference. I have a special code. I can give everybody in that conference a free audio copy of my book, and then I can interact with them because I have their email and other information. And I can learn so much about what people are enjoying about the book, questions they have, etc., so forth. It is so powerful. So whether this is your first audiobook or you've got a catalog, doesn't matter. Go to Zoundy.com, Zoundy.com. If you go Zoundy.com/J and use my code JAY25, that's JAY25, you're going to get special savings. So check it out, Zoundy.com/J. And Linda Craft Team Realtors, longtime, first-time sponsor. Listen, folks, here's the deal. They help people transition in life. You said they're a real estate company, didn't you, Jay? I did. Fact of the matter is, for over 40 years, what they've helped people do is transition in life. And you go, how? And well, it's really simple. Every place you ever lived has been a life transition, right? They know how to do it, take the stress out of it. They've been doing it successfully for 40 years, helping thousands of people. They can help you. I'm telling you, look them up. It's lindacraft.com, LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with my friend. I'm going to call him my friend. He doesn't know it yet, but we're friends. Alex Brueckmann, The Strategy Legacy. I don't want to spend the whole show, because I could spend the whole show on just talking about impact. But one of the things that I think that we miss out on is that we set up a purpose, and it sounds really great on paper, but we're missing the deeper part of it, and that is, what really is our impact on our, not just our customers, but also I think it's got to be part of our employees too, that their buy-in. And you said something really interesting in this section. You said Purpose, impact translates purpose into action and fuels your fire. Impact and purpose motivates employees and other stakeholders to perform at their daily best. Here was the big key for me. Their focus is less on financial success and more of building a business and life of significance. That to me, Alex, is gold, because I think we get caught up into a financial transactional world. But when we're focused on impact, right? I'm not saying that money's not important. I get it. It is. But when we clearly know what our impact is, all of a sudden that becomes less important and we're more focused on the impact. That's what I found powerful for me.
I'm glad that resonates. I think for me, the aha moment before I wrote this section in the book was around like asking myself, how do I want my business to look like in the future? Like before I transitioned from leading a business in Germany to moving my family to Canada, I never thought about these topics on a deeper level. But when I had the time to write down my thoughts and really dig into topics and ask myself questions that kind of really challenged me, it was really timely, because here in Canada, I had the opportunity to rebuild a business, and I had the once in a lifetime chance to kind of go greenfield and ask myself, do I just want to rebuild what I had in Europe, or do I want to do something different? And the guiding question in the end was not what would be the most financially beneficial part, but the guiding question became, what does success mean for me? And that question led to, it's actually not about success, it's about significance. I want to create something that I know has a deep impact on the people that work with me, on the organizations that bring me in to help them with their strategy and their identity. And the reason for that is that I've had some encounters in my past professional career that kind of stuck with me. And those were always the moments when someone I randomly bumped into that I had worked with before shared with me how deeply impactful the work was after I have long left. But because the people in the business understood strategy from a new perspective, they were able to make it their job every day. Like strategy became something that was relevant for everyone in the business every day. And because of that, there was an acceleration in the business that they would not have thought possible. And I didn't have like countless of these encounters, but there were a few. And those few moments, they just stuck with me. And I just said to myself, that makes the life of these people better. They have more fulfilling work lives. With that comes more groundedness that they bring back into their personal life. And you kind of see how the good spreads, the positive energy spreads. And I figured there are a lot of things that I did in the past in my previous businesses. I want to hone in on exactly one of those things, because this is how I can have the biggest impact on the people that I work with. So this significance to me means, this word significance to me means build something that even if you do not have financial success with it, you keep going because it fuels your fire. You're right, Jay. Money is important. You need to make it a non-issue. But I always say, I don't want to become rich and famous. I want to lead a healthy, happy life for me and my small family. And if I make that work from a financial perspective, everything else is icing on the cake.
Yeah.
So that focus on
you clearly like cake, because you're there's something about you and chocolate cream.
I damn love cake. Oh my God. Like all kinds of cake. Cake is my nemesis. I mean, who doesn't like cake? What's wrong with you if you don't like cake?
No, I didn't say that. I'm just saying you clearly like cake more than most of us do. I mean, you clearly like the buttercream. You like the chocolate buttercream, man.
Bakers.
I want to chat about principles for a second. There's something that you pulled from the epilogue that I'm pulling into principles, and you talk about in the epilogue at the end of the book, you say, know your moral compass.
Mm-hmm.
And in principles, you talk about it's the underlying values and behavior guidelines. And you already alluded to the diamonds, right? The non-negotiables. I think that under pressure, they just will never change. And how do we go about really assessing what our real values are? Because I think oftentimes what we do is we want values that we want to aspire to. And I see companies, I coach companies, and I see this all the time in companies I coach. They want values that they want to aspire to versus the values that they actually are. And it's two different things. So how do we help them sort this out? Because I don't think, I think if you're a company that's trying to aspire to a value, I think you're working way too hard to ever get to a point where you're going to be successful versus taking the values that you have, and I'm hopeful that they're good and that you have the right moral compass, and settling on those because that's who you really are. That's the authenticity of who you are. Talk through us that about the principles, the underlying values and behavioral guidelines.
We work with organizations in a pretty nuanced way when it comes to their values. So I already talked about diamond values. That's probably one or two. Many organizations have a list of 5, 6, sometimes 10 values.
Right.
And they are kind of arbitrary. Because it's so many, it doesn't mean much anymore. So if you really hone in on what the 1 or 2 diamond values are, you already have a really solid understanding of what matters to you, because a value is simply something that is valuable to you. And if you understand it that way, and you are able to give these values meaning by naming them what they are, not giving them some abstract ethical term like fairness, what on earth does that mean? That means nothing. For me, a value is not one word. For me, a value is a short sentence or a combination of 3, 4 words that all of a sudden go where everyone who hears that is like, I think I know what that means. I think I know how that looks like or can look like in practice. So really making that tangible and meaningful. So that is the diamond values. And then there is nuance to all the other values, right? Mm-hmm. There are also what we call must-have values. So for example, fairness and respect to me are just values, if you want, that every decent human being has.
Right.
So it's by like not having them, you're basically like saying, I'm mean.
Yeah, right. It's like it's saying integrity. Well, I hope you have integrity.
Exactly.
It shouldn't be written out as a value for you.
Yeah.
Because for the love and the sake of all things rational, I hope that as a business owner, that's not something that you put on the wall. That's something you should just have with you. Right?
The thing is, if I see a company with those words like integrity, respect, fairness, and all their values are just these, what we call must-have values, all they're saying is they are decent. Yeah, I hope so. Otherwise, I wouldn't even talk to you.
Right.
I want values to be meaningful, not just ethical terms. Now, there's nothing wrong with having an ethical value, an ethical term as a value, as long as you make that meaningful and translate it into specific action.
Right.
And then the third nuance that we have, and you alluded to it, Jay, the topic of aspirational values. Especially when you realize that there is a lot of talk around a certain thing that seems to be valuable to people, but then you take a strong, hard look in the mirror and you're like, do we really embody that in every fiber of our being? And you're like, not quite, but we want to.
Right.
Then it makes sense to actually write it down as an aspirational value and clearly labeling it that. So otherwise people become cynical. They're like, yeah, right. As if, you know?
Right.
I agree. If you have, let's say, a set of 3, 4 values, one of them is a diamond value, absolutely non-negotiable. Even under pressure, you're willing to lose business because you hold onto it. Then there might be 1 or 2 that are kind of must-have values, but they are very meaningful for you, and you describe them in ways that people be like, that is actually a distinction to what I usually see people talk about, that particular word. And then you can also include 1 or 2 aspirational values and be like, we're not there yet. We know that. but this is our guiding light. This is what we aspire to become. And if you are nuanced enough in how you describe your values, and if you help the people in the business understand what these values mean on a daily basis and in their interactions, for example, with leaders, with clients, with all kinds of stakeholder groups, and you make it specific to their job. For example, let's say you are a global corporation and you have a set of values. Those values need to be meaningful for your team of corporate lawyers in Japan, and you need to break them down so that they know what they mean in their context. And also your team of sales reps in Latin America need to understand those values in the context of their reality. Those might be the same words in the beginning or the same sentences in the beginning, but when you break them down into what it means to their business, specifically in their role, in what they do every day, those values become meaningful. You can live them and translate them into guiding principles, into behavioral guidelines, if you want.
The third piece of this is the mission. And I struggle with this. Not personally, I struggle with it when I walk into businesses and I read their mission statement and I see their mission statement on the wall. And I actually had this conversation with a company that I was walking into. I was actually going to be actually doing business with them. And I was reading their mission statement. And I asked the person we were getting ready to do this business with, and I said, I just have a question. What part of what we're doing is fulfilling your mission statement? And he got dead silent. And he was almost embarrassed. And he said, no one's ever read the mission statement to us before. And he goes, I haven't really looked at it. And he goes, you're right. I should be following the mission. And I didn't do it to embarrass him, but I thought, okay, well, if this is your mission statement, then shouldn't what you're doing with me reflect that mission statement? And it wasn't happening. And I was just like going, okay, can we get back to what the mission statement says? And I think there's a huge disconnect for the mission statement. And the mission statement was rather lengthy as well, by the way. Which you talk about, one of the characteristics of a great mission statement is no frills. 2 words you use, no frills. Let's talk about the problems with mission statements and what we should be doing.
The way we understand mission statements is in the pure military sense of where the word comes from, right? Your mission is to take that hill and plant the flag, whatever it takes. And if you translate that into a corporate context, it is basically the description of what you do. Very simple, in very simple terms. I describe in the strategy legacy the best example of a mission statement that I've ever seen, which is the mission statement of the voluntary fire brigades in Germany. It is literally 4 verbs. It is just what they do. They describe what they do. It's protect, extinguish, and 2 more words, just verbs. And that's a mission. It is what you do and for whom. So you extinguish the fire, you protect lives, you preserve assets. That's what you do. And you do it for the people who own that house, who own that business that's on fire, or, whatever it is that they do. Saving lives can also include rescuing people after a car crash, right? That doesn't necessarily have to be a fire, but it's also part of what your mission is as a firefighter. And in the corporate world, mission statements and vision statements and all kinds of statements are being conflated and convoluted and used in all kinds of ways, which is totally fine. But the problem is, as long as you don't have a clear definition of what all these things are, you use them in ways that are not helpful for you.
Right.
That's why we said a mission is the definition of what you do and for whom. And you would not believe how passionate those discussions can become when you sit in a room with a group of executives and you ask them, like, if you describe to a 5-year-old what you do and for whom, what would that be? And that is the level of language that we aspire to understand. Like, what is it that we do and for whom? It defines 2 absolutely core essentials of any company. What is it that you do defines your business. If you tell me you produce light bulbs and you also offer financial services, I would be like, really? Is that what you do? Are you sure about that? And for large organizations who offer all kinds of services, is often really tricky to define what they do. And the second part of a mission statement, what you do and for whom, defines your niche, your target audience. If you don't have either of those things, if you don't have clarity about the service offering and you don't have clarity about whom you do that for, you don't have a business. Because then you are everything to everyone. That means you're nothing. Because you can't be everything to everyone at the same time. So fully understanding of what you do and for whom, by the way, is not only important from a business perspective, it is the absolute essential question that every department and every function in the business needs to ask themselves. What is it that we do and for whom describes your mission. The impact describes what the value is that you create by doing that. And your strategy is the choices that you make to fulfill that mission and to create that impact in the best possible way. It's relatively simple if you put it like that, but if you've never really thought those things through, all these words like purpose, goal, strategy, mission, vision, they all just go like, wait a second, I've never went to business school. I never heard these terms. I just pick up on what I've been hearing throughout my career. And now I'm kind of confused, but I don't want to admit that. So I just play along and use those words in the sense that I think they mean something to me. And that's an issue. So you can give all these things your own labels. So if you're listening right now, you don't need to use my definitions, but please use clear definitions and give those things labels that mean something in your business and use them concisely and cohesively.
And daily and throughout, make your decisions with them. The book, by the way, isn't he brilliant? I mean, I think I could just sit and listen to him for hours and just go, okay, just keep teaching me. I'm a sponge. The author, Alex Brueckmann, a book, The Strategy Legacy, How to Future-Proof a Business, Leave Your Mark. Fabulous, Wall Street bestseller. You're listening to him here on A New Direction. Hey, folks, I talk about Zoundy. I love Zoundy. I use Zoundy. If you're an author or publisher, you really need to get in on the audio space of Zoundy. The difference between any other audio space and Zoundy is this: I can actually connect with the people who are downloading the book. I have a code for Facebook. I have a code for Instagram. I have a code for TikTok. I have a code where I can give away my book and find out where people are, most likely to read or want to download my book. And then I get to interact with them via their email. It's so cool to do it because I get to find out what they like about the book, what they don't like about the book, what they want me to write next. Lots of questions. It also helps me in my business. So listen, when you're ready to leverage your audiobook in a different way, check out Zoundy.com, Zoundy.com. Use my special code, Zoundy.com/J, that's Jay, and use the code JAY25. You'll unlock some special savings. You're going to be so glad you did. It's brilliant. You're going to love it. Linda Craft of Team Realtors. Let me just say this. I'm a little biased, and I admit that. But I think it's the best real estate website there is out there. LindaCraft.com. I think it's the best real estate website. Yeah, they have everything that all the other websites have. But here's some of the things that you may not be thinking of. What they also include is like they had a child psychologist write about how to move with your children. They had a veterinary specialist write about how to move with your animals across country or locally. They have so much material and so much content. They have a great show called Real Estate Right Now, where they're talking about things that are happening in the real estate market currently, mortgages, lending, roofing, you name it. There's all sorts of things they're talking about on that show. I highly recommend you check it out. It's lindacraft.com. You're not going to be disappointed. LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with my friend Alex Brueckmann. The book, The Strategy Legacy, How to Future-Proof a Business and Leave Your Mark. Wall Street Journal bestseller, by the way. You should know that. Get yourself a copy. Amazon, everywhere where books are sold. It's absolutely brilliant. I'm telling you, I just think it's one of the best books. What I love about what you've done here, Alex, is I love the fact that we're starting with people. And I think the thing is, if we really think about what we're doing here in these first three in this circle, and we're going to get to vision next, but when it comes to impact, principles, and mission, what we're really talking about is who are we? Who are we really?
Yeah.
And I don't think we spend enough time talking about who we are. I think we assume who we are, but we don't really dig into, but what is the root of who we are? And I think that's one of the brilliance about this book that you wrote, is that we have to, before we can start helping everybody else out there, we need to figure out who we are first. And that's what you bring to I think you bring to the table, especially in the identity theory that you have here, which just works brilliantly, by the way, is that before we can help anybody else, we got to know ourselves. And I think that's so awesome. And then we start moving into the second circle, which moves into vision and strategy maps and goals, I think. And so when I look at vision, I think that we have oftentimes confused vision with mission. And vision and mission are two distinctly different things. So maybe help us a little bit here in wrapping our mind about what really is vision. When we say we're making a vision statement, what are we really saying, and how do we go about doing
that? What is the saying? There are many different ways to skin a cat, or something like that. I never really particularly like that saying, but because I love cats and I don't want to skin them. The way we understand vision statements is relatively straightforward. So we do not write a vision statement for the outside world. We write a vision statement to capture the ideal future state of our business at some point in the future. So let's say we look into the next 18 to 24 months and we ask ourselves, at the end of that journey, what is it that our business should be able to deliver? And with that comes the question, who are our most important stakeholders, and what is the value that we want to create for them? And you literally describe the ideal future state through the lens of these stakeholders. For example, that means, let's assume you have four distinct stakeholder groups. Let's say, obviously, your clients, your investors, your employees, and maybe your suppliers, right? And then you ask yourself, what is the value that these target groups, each of them, should perceive from interacting with us? From an investor perspective, what is the value that they want from giving us their money? From a client perspective, what is the value that we want them to enjoy from our services or our products? From an employee perspective, what is the value beyond money? This is all beyond money, by the way. What is the value that we want our employees to experience by bringing their work, themselves to work every day? What is that? Like this is all beyond transactional. Obviously, a shareholder and an investor has a financial need, or a financial want, or a financial aspiration. But there might be more than that, right? Especially if we're not publicly listed. There might be more than that. There might be a reason, deeper reason why someone invests in a business. I'll give you an example. I invest in businesses that are here in the local community and that fill the gap of a lack of community space where parents and children can enjoy their spare time. Our community is massively underserved with that. So that's what I invest my money in. And I don't do that for financial reasons. I do that to help create a more livable community. And since I have a small child myself, I know how much I benefit from that. Yes, and ideally, I also make sure that my money does not get less over time. But money is not the main motivator for every investor. At the same time, money is not the same motivator, or it's not the motivator for every employee. Of course, they want to put money, they want to put food on the table, but there is something beyond that. So describing that value in your vision statement describes how you are who you are. That's in the end what a vision statement is. Like, what is it that you want to create? What do you want the business to look like in terms of value creation at some point in the future? And then your strategy simply becomes the choices that you make out of the million things that you could decide. You take the 3, 4, 5 game-changing choices that combined help you get to that vision in the fastest possible way. And the third element in that strategy circle, the goals, they are literally just your smart breakdown of the terms that you use in your vision statement. So you make it specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and timed. That's what SMART stands for, which most of you probably know. And if you do that, your vision statement is not a fluffy aspiration. It is a very specific, very measurable statement that you then translate into choices. And those choices you then translate into plans and into budgets, so that you allocate your resources into everything that helps you follow through on those priority or those choices. And that's what strategy is in the end, creating value in ways that are efficient and effective.
You know, I found it interesting. First of all, I loved your research from Canterbury and Avery on the commonly shared characteristics of powerful vision: conciseness, clarity, future orientation, stability, challenge, abstractness, and desirability or ability to inspire, which I think a vision statement has to have all those basic qualities. But the one thing you say here that I found incredibly interesting is that the challenge when it comes to vision is that it contains both the details of the organization's picture of the future and is still memorable. Mm-hmm. And I want to challenge everybody out there who, if you've written a vision statement, is it memorable? Right? I mean, and I think the other thing that you pull into here, Alex, is that, is it measurable? And I think that's so important, because you can have you talk a lot about foresight in the book, and I think it's brilliantly done, by the way, about having more foresight. But I think what happens is, first of all, we don't remember the vision. We don't hold on to the vision. We don't measure if we're on track towards the vision. And I think the vision gets lost. Yes. For most companies. And so what happens is we default back to just simply carving out some sort of strategy for today versus going, is this strategy that we've coupled with our identity, is it moving us towards where we want to be 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road? And I think that's lost on how we are if we're measuring that correctly. Do I got that wrong?
I think you got that right. I just think those are two different horizons that we need to be aware of. The long-term future of an organization is not the responsibility of the management today. The responsibility of management today is to define a way to satisfy the value needs of its stakeholders. The long-term health is the long-term health of an organization is the responsibility of the board of directors. If you don't have a board of directors, if you are an owner operator, for example, then of course, in unison, you have both roles. But it is extremely difficult. If you take a look at most organizations, you can't tell management, you should make choices that are in line with where we want the business to be in 20 years. That's just unrealistic. Instead, management should be responsible for defining the strategy and fulfilling the strategy, implementing it. And that is often a 18-month, 3-year time frame, sometimes a bit more. It depends on the industry, what makes sense, and where you are in the life cycle, and the maturity of your business, etc. When it comes to 10, 15, 20 years from now, that is often something that you can practice for yourself way better than for a business. So for example, the decisions that I make, I'm in my mid and 40s now. The decisions that I make have a 15 to 20-year time horizon, because that is when I will likely want to retire. That means everything that I do from a business perspective needs to be in service of my 20-year vision of how I would love my life to look like when I start working less. If I do not have that in mind as a business owner, I am up for some really interesting surprises when I retire. And I don't want to be there. I want to have clarity on how my life should look like in 20 years from now. Whether that turns out to be that way is a completely different question.
Right.
But I need to have that guiding light, that vision 20 years from now. How should it ideally look from everything that I know now? And by the way, that is something that it develops, because as we grow, as we mature, our vision might change, and that's fine.
Right.
But you cannot just think that you do the best you can and that you hope for the best in the future. Right. That doesn't work. Yeah, so I would distinguish between the time horizons and whose responsibility that is eventually.
Right. Yeah. We've done an hour, Alex. It's
amazing.
It's gone really fast. I really enjoyed it. I hope you have too. It's been a lot of fun, and we didn't get very far into the book. In fact, we didn't get out of the first chapter of the book, but it's been so much fun doing this with you. Tell people how they can best get a hold of you. Also talk about that you have these cohorts that you talked to me about that you do, and what those are, and that people can actually sign up. There is a cost, but that they can sign up and join you for these cohorts. Can you talk about some of those things and how people reach out to you and that have more?
For sure. So based on the strategy legacy, I asked myself at some point, like, how can we help people to do these things? Not just read about it, but actually do it, implement it in their business. And what we then did was design a training program, which is 3 times 4 hours, where it's a live training. I lead it myself, where I help mostly, let's say, first and second tier leaders like CEOs and their direct reports, directors, VPs, SVPs, to take the content of the book and turn it into their business, and to create meaningful purpose statements, meaningful impact statements, to redefine their cultural core, to help reshape their strategy and put their execution edge into place. Like we do that really hands-on. It's a cohort that we run almost every month. So the next one is in June. And what we do is, in small groups, like we only accept maximum 15 people in these cohorts, so that we can really specifically talk about these 9 elements in the context of your business. You can find everything about the program at 9eoi.com. 9EOI, 9 elements of organizational identity. 9EOI.com.
I knew there was an E. I just couldn't remember what order it was. I all of a sudden.
Which order is it?
Yeah, it's 9eoi.com. Number 9. The number 9, right?
Exactly, the number 9.
The number 9, eoi.com. Check it out. Alex, stay with me, please. Folks, this is a show. You know what I say to you every week, right? You are in control of 3 things in your life: your attitude, your effort, and your resiliency. Life doesn't always give us what we want. And in fact, sometimes circumstances come up where we're challenged beyond what we think we can take. The fact of the matter is, you have a choice. You are in control of your attitude. Even when things go wrong, you can choose the attitude that you want. I didn't say it was easy, but you still can choose it. Your effort is also something that you choose. We all have different amounts of gasoline in the tank on any given day, but your effort is related to your excellence. So how excellent are you choosing to be today? And then finally, resilience. We all get punched in the gut or punched in the teeth and get knocked down, but it's up to you to get back up, and we need you to get back up. Why? because you're worth it, and we want you on the team. I'll be back next week with another great author, another great book. It's going to be another great show. It has to be. As I say to you all over the world, you had a lot of choices. You chose us. I thank you for doing that. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Give us a 5-star review wherever you're listening to the show. As I say to you all over the world, you know what that is. Ciao, everybody.